Now that we've practiced part B, part A prime, and part C, I want to play them all in a row so you can see where we are so far. This is going to be the whole middle of the piece. On either side of this are various kinds of part A. Here is part B with repeating, followed by part A prime, part C, all of that repeated, and then I'll show you some more stuff for our very last section of the piece. What follows next is A double prime. We're going to have two phrases that are almost identical to what we had in the original A section. And then phrase 3 is going to take a turn, and phrase 4 will be completely new. Here is part A double prime, and I'll just skip ahead to the second phrase where a very small change happens. Watch my left hand at the very end of phrase 2. Here, in this final A section, the left hand finishes with a sixth instead of a complete chord. I play it with 3 and 1, and you can too if the stretch doesn't feel too bad for you. So here's part A double prime, phrase 1 and 2. Phrase 3 begins like what we're used to, but then in the third and fourth measure takes a turn in a different direction. Here are those measures. The left hand will be playing an E7 chord with thirds, and then an A minor chord. So here is phrase 3. With those two new left-hand measures, and I won't play the right hand yet because I haven't shown it to you. I recommend pausing the video now to get used to that. The right hand plays an attractive portion which sounds a little bit like the end of phrase 4 in part A. Here's the end of phrase 4, part A. And here's what right hand does at the end of phrase 3 for part A double prime. We have a little ornament. 1, 4, 3, starting on the E key, and then finger 2 on D sharp, and then 1, 5, 1, and then 2 crossing over onto treble C. This ornament is written as a little short trill squiggle instead of the 2 little notes written out like they were in part A, so I'll be playing it as a triplet and not just as fast as possible, which is what that would have been. Here it is in slow motion, the 3rd and 4th measure of this 3rd phrase, and I'll play with both hands now. And even slower if it helps. The complete phrase 3 is like this. Complete phrase 1, 2, and 3 is like this. Phrase 4 will be completely new, and the right hand plays this. I'm playing a very calm trill there at the end. I haven't practiced it much, so I'm just going slow for now. The right hand plays a descending scale starting on high C. The counting for this will be 1 and 2 and 3 and. When you hear me play with both hands, you'll notice that I don't start on the first beat of the measure, and so I'm telling you the counting now so you know what to expect. 1 and 2 and 3 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Hear it with both hands. The left hand only plays a bass C followed by an E octave. The E octave also includes an A in the middle. I play that with my finger too, and I even play the octave with 4 and 1 in order to practice stretching my hand. If you didn't want to do that, play the E octave with 1 and 5, and then play the A with finger 3. There is a rest after this, so I shouldn't hold it for too long. 1 and 2 and 3 and. 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's how the first measure of phrase 4 will be. Here we go for the second measure. The right hand starts on E and plays 3 notes before changing position. It's fingers 4, 3, 2. And then curl your thumb under, and we'll play 1, 2, 3, starting on D and going to E and F. Two measures of the right hand there. The left hand moves up a step from the first measure. The first measure started with this bass C. The second measure will start with D. Let's do just bass notes alone. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. The next bass note will be an E. For the left hand, after it plays the D, it will have this chord, A, B, F. I recommend playing with 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 It's a really big stretch, but again, I'm just trying to stretch my hand out, and also feel like this second measure just makes me think of a tenth. So I just want to get practice playing tenths broken up. So for the second measure, I do use finger 5 on D, and then fingers 3, 2, 1 on the chord. Here's the left hand for measure 1 and 2 of this phrase 4. One and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. The left hand for the third and fourth measure will be a little bit more complex than what we're used to for this piece. We'll do a low E, but then instead of going right to an E7, Chopin uses the interval of a sixth, an E and a C. Get used to going back and forth between these. And then after that, there is a E7 chord with a fifth. So 3 measures of the left hand are like this. The end of the phrase and the end of the entire waltz has A and then a sixth, E and middle C. You can play those with fingers other than 3 if you want to, but I play it with 3 on E and then 1 on middle C. The third measure of the phrase has a trill. Because we had an F at the end of measure 2 and we're starting a trill with E in measure 3, we don't play the F again traditionally. I recommend playing that many notes. Playing 5 would also be fine. After the 5 or 7 or more notes, you reach over onto D sharp. You could reach over with finger 2 or finger 3 onto D sharp. The most important thing after you play the D sharp is that whenever you play the F key later, you're sure to have finger 5 on that, so that it's easier to reach the G sharp with finger 1 and then finish with our tonic note with finger 2. I'm trying it different ways. I usually play with 3 reaching over, but now I'm trying 2. I personally like 3 a little bit more, but I think most people would probably like 2. If you do finger 2 on D sharp, I recommend having finger 3 on E and then squeezing your hand and having finger 5 on F. Here's the entire phrase. I'll now show you phrase 3 and 4 of this part A double prime section because they are the ones with the biggest variation from what we're used to. And now I'll show you the whole last A section. It's okay to end the piece with a pretty big slowdown. You could do a bigger slowdown than I did. You could also start the trill slowly like I did there. Okay, I'll see you next time. Now you have all the notes necessary to play the piece in its entirety, and we can start practicing sections and phrases out of order. Happy practicing.